They said, what we do in life echoes in eternity. But what happened behind the scenes of Gladiator 2000 echoed in chaos, danger, and history. From real tiger attacks to last-minute rewrites and haunting tragedies, Ridley Scott's masterpiece was a battlefield on and off the screen. What you saw was glory. What they lived was survival. So grab your sword and shield, because here are 10 weird facts about Gladiator 2000 you never knew. 1. Russell Crowe. Hated the script. Before filming even began, Russell Crowe almost walked away from Gladiator. When he first read the script, he called it absolute garbage. There wasn't even a proper ending, just fragments of scenes and poetic ideas. But Ridley Scott convinced him to stay, promising they'd figure it out together on set. Crowe trusted him, and the two built the character of Maximus piece by piece, rewriting dialogue daily. What began as confusion turned into one of cinema's most iconic performances. 2. Oliver Reed. Died before filming was complete. One of the film's most shocking behind-the-scenes events was the death of British actor Oliver Reed, who played Proximo. Reed died suddenly of a heart attack while drinking with sailors in Malta, just weeks before finishing his scenes. The studio faced an impossible choice: cut his character or recreate him digitally. Using early CGI technology and body doubles, Ridley Scott completed Reed's remaining scenes, costing over $3 million. It became one of the first major uses of CGI to finish an actor's performance. Reed's death added haunting depth to the film, especially his final line, "We mortals are but shadows and dust." 3. Russell Crowe was injured in nearly every battle scene. The blood you see on Crowe wasn't always fake. During production, he broke a foot bone, injured his hip, and lost all feeling in one finger for 2 years after a sword fight accident. In the opening battle scene against the Germanic tribes, a horse actually trampled him. Crowe refused to stop filming, saying, "Pain adds truth." By the end of production, his body was covered in scars, just like a real gladiator. 4. Joaquin Phoenix. Struggled with playing Commodus. Joaquin Phoenix was only 25 when he played the ruthless Emperor Commodus, and he found it emotionally disturbing. During the scene where Commodus kills his father, Phoenix reportedly broke down crying between takes, saying he couldn't bear to murder Richard Harris, who played Marcus Aurelius. Phoenix also hated portraying such deep cruelty. He even asked Ridley Scott to reduce the number of times he touched or kissed his sister, Lucilla, because it made him deeply uncomfortable. Ironically, his unease made his performance even more unsettling, turning Commodus into one of cinema's most psychologically complex villains. 5. The tiger fights were 100% real. When Maximus fights tigers in the Colosseum, those weren't CGI creatures. They were 5 real Bengal tigers, each weighing over 450 pounds. Russell Crowe stood only a few feet away from them, separated by hidden chains the camera couldn't see. One tiger came dangerously close during filming, swiping at Crowe's leg. The production team had tranquilizer rifles aimed at the animals at all times. The director later said, "We shot with real tigers because fear can't be faked." And Russell's fear was real. 6. The Colosseum wasn't real either. When you watch Gladiator, it's impossible not to marvel at the sheer scale of the Roman Colosseum. Towering walls, roaring crowds, and sunlight cutting through the ancient arches. But here's the truth. What you saw wasn't real. In fact, only 1/3 of the Colosseum physically existed. Ridley Scott and his production team built a partial replica in Malta, a 52-foot-tall structure made of plaster, wood, and steel, representing just the lower tiers of the arena. Everything above that was added later using computer-generated imagery. But the magic lies in how flawlessly those two worlds, real and digital, blended together. The CGI was so meticulously crafted that even historians now use Gladiator's version as a visual reference for how the original Roman Colosseum might have looked at its peak. The filmmakers studied ancient blueprints, consulted archaeologists, and digitally reconstructed every column, statue, and banner. This was 1999, long before modern CGI was common. Yet the result remains breathtaking. Ridley Scott's combination of practical set design and early digital wizardry didn't just recreate history, it redefined filmmaking. He built a bridge between ancient Rome and the digital age, a technique that changed how historical epics are made forever. 7. The famous thumbs up. Gesture is historically wrong. One of the most dramatic moments in Gladiator is when Emperor Commodus raises his hand, deciding whether a defeated gladiator lives or dies. The crowd holds its breath, waiting for that infamous signal. Thumbs up for mercy, thumbs down for death. It's pure cinema, but historically, totally wrong. In ancient Rome, the thumbs up or down gesture didn't mean what we think it does today. The phrase pollis verso, Latin for turned thumb, was ambiguous. Historians still debate which direction actually meant life or death. Some evidence suggests a closed fist meant mercy, while a thumbs up symbolized unsheathing a sword for the kill. Ridley Scott knew this, but he also knew audiences connected emotionally with the modern version. So he kept it, because storytelling, not textbook accuracy, is what makes moments legendary. Ironically, this creative liberty became one of the film's most recognizable images. Sometimes myth captures the truth better than history ever could, and Gladiator's thumbs down became cinematic shorthand for fate itself. 8. Hans Zimmer's score was accused of plagiarism. Few soundtracks have the emotional weight of Gladiator's. Hans Zimmer, alongside singer Lisa Gerrard, crafted a score that felt like memory and destiny colliding. The music's haunting vocals and sweeping orchestration gave the film its soul, but it also sparked controversy. A few years after release, critics noticed that parts of the Gladiator soundtrack sounded almost identical to Zimmer's earlier work in The Thin Red Line. He was accused of copying his own melodies. Zimmer calmly responded, saying that both films explored similar themes: death, heroism, and the search for meaning. So he reused emotional motifs intentionally. Whatever the truth, the Gladiator soundtrack became immortal. Lisa Gerrard's voice, singing in a language of her own invention, transcended words. It touched something primal, a connection to loss, triumph, and memory. The score went on to influence countless films, including Pirates of the Caribbean, which borrowed elements of Zimmer's rhythms and structure. When that music swells, when Maximus rides through golden fields toward his family, it doesn't just accompany the scene, it defines it. It's one of the greatest examples of sound and story merging into pure emotion. 9. Maximus wasn't supposed to die. Here's something few fans know. In early drafts of Gladiator, Maximus didn't die. The original ending had him surviving the final duel with Commodus, leaving the Colosseum wounded but alive. But Ridley Scott felt something was missing. He believed Maximus's journey wasn't about victory. It was about redemption. He wanted the story to end not with survival, but with peace. Russell Crowe initially resisted, asking, "But how can I die?" "I'm the hero," Scott's answer was simple. Exactly. You die a hero. The rewritten ending, Maximus collapsing, reuniting with his wife and son in the afterlife, became one of the most powerful conclusions in modern cinema. It turned a violent revenge story into a spiritual odyssey. The audience didn't leave mourning his death. They left inspired by his sacrifice. That final vision of Maximus walking through the wheat fields toward his family has become an image of eternal peace. The warrior finally going home. It's why people still cry during that scene 2 decades later. 10. It was almost a financial disaster, until it became a masterpiece. Despite its glory, Gladiator was chaos behind the camera. The script was unfinished when filming began, major scenes were rewritten on the spot, and an actor, Oliver Reed, died before his scenes were completed. The movie went millions over budget, and the studio began to panic. Executives predicted a disaster. But then came opening night. Audiences were stunned. The film's emotion, scale, and realism struck a chord across the world. Gladiator grossed over $460 million, won 5 Academy Awards, and single-handedly resurrected the sword and sandal genre that Hollywood had abandoned for decades. Ridley Scott turned every setback into strength. His vision, forged in dust, sweat, and blood, gave cinema one of its greatest triumphs. Gladiator wasn't just a movie, it was proof that chaos, when guided by purpose, can create art that lasts forever. Even now, more than 20 years later, every clang of a sword, every roar of the crowd still echoes across time. Russell Crowe once said, "Maximus wasn't just a role, he was something I carried with me." And maybe that's why Gladiator endures, because it reminds us of what we fight for: honor, love, and the dream of home. As the dust settles on the arena floor, one truth remains: what they did in Gladiator still echoes in eternity.